been delighting in everybody tweeting about how, hey, in plague times, here's some famous people that did some really amazing things. And I don't know if it's helpful or not to know this, but people are like, oh yeah, during the Great London Plague of 1606, Shakespeare retreated to Stratford-upon-Avon and he wrote Macbeth and he wrote King Lear and he wrote all this. And you're like, all right, great, I'm processing that. And then they're like, yeah, and then in the Great Plague of 1665, Sir Isaac Newton got the heck out of the college town and went out and figured out calculus and figured out gravity and figured out color theory and the color spectrum. And you're like, all right, great, well, but my favorite response to all of that is like, yeah, all right, those two created Macbeth and King Lear and gravity and calculus, but they didn't have Pornhub. So you tell me how to fill my day. I don't know.
Yeah, they did have an unfair advantage in that regard, didn't they?
Yeah, true boredom, Brad, is an amazing inspirer.
Oh my gosh. Well, the thing I like about that, though, I mean, the wonderful punchline aside, is that, yes, we're faced with really, really difficult times right now, but sometimes that's when creative people are at their best. And I'm always reminded of that story about debtors or creditors, rather, carrying the furniture out of the Timely publishing offices and people like literally sitting on the floor crying. And that's when Jack Kirby said to Stan Lee, I've got we've got one more shot. Let's go out with a bang. And that's when Fantastic Four #1 was published. And it literally revitalized the entire comics industry was Fantastic Four. Specifically for Marvel, but the industry in general. Sometimes when things are absolutely at their worst is when we're at our best.
That's so true. And you know what? Can I tell you, or share with you rather, my personal headcanon of that moment?
Yeah.
Is that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby are sitting on the two leftover chairs in the office of Timely Comics. And there's a huge, strong mover, a very spindly mover with long, stretchy arms, another mover with a clipboard and she's barking orders at everybody but trying to stay out of the way, and another mover who's just sweating so much because he's so hot. He's like, let's see, what can I do here? Fantastic Four. What if we had a rock guy, a stretchy guy,
a woman that nobody sees, but she's still there, and a hothead.
And a hothead.
Yeah.
You're right though. I had forgotten about the Fantastic Four coming up in times of adversity. But it does speak to the fact that, Brad, we are not the first human beings to live in times of adversity.
Yeah.
And the creativity, the mother of invention, boy, is alive and well in times that are really shitty because people are like, what do? I got to do something. I got to create to make a living.
Yeah.
And so that starts to kick in. But yeah, it's also the terror of realizing that we are currently living the Chinese curse of may you live in interesting times.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Unfortunately, now we all have good stories for our grandkids that they won't want to listen to, but that are terrifying for us. That we are living in interesting times. But anyway, on that happy note, that none of us will achieve what Shakespeare or Isaac Newton did, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon, co-director of Strip, and future author of Macbeth Part 2, The Macbethening.
The Macbethening. And this week's hour of comics advice is brought to you by our Patreon backers at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And we've got a great question to lead off the show coming in from our Patreon backer, Rebecca D, over at patreon.com/comiclab. And Rebecca writes, since you two have worked at home from years, oh my God, let me learn the English language real quick, Brad. Rebecca writes, since you two have worked at home for years, do you have any advice for those of us who are now working from home about how to maintain social ties while working in your house? Well, so Rebecca, this is a perfect question and super timely, and we're happy to answer it. And I think we should take it broader than just social ties while working in your house. I think we should share what we know, Brad, after 10 years or so of working from home, about the pitfalls to try to avoid.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to avoid them perfectly, but to try to avoid, and the best steps to take, don't you think, in terms of working from home?
No, I agree 100%. Because if you're asking me about how to maintain social ties while working from home, you're asking the wrong guy. This is actually the one thing about this whole crisis that I'm actually secretly loving is...
I know. Oh my God, I had the same conversation with my wife last night, Brad. Okay, go ahead. Finish whatever your thought is.
Yeah, social distancing is my jam. I love social distancing. This has been the best thing. Social ties. I've got a lot of things on my mind for the last several weeks. Maintaining social ties has not been high on that list.
Oh my God. Two introverts that kind of are antisocial. This is a great topic for us. Yeah. No, I roll over in bed the other night, last night, literally, falling asleep. And I'm like, I don't hate this part.
Yeah.
I love that I don't have to come up with excuses for why I can't go to your thing. You know?
Yeah.
I love that it's just my family that I love and I stuck at home and we're all a happy little unit. You know, that's great. That's all I want.
Yeah. No, this has been perfect. You know, the only drawback is that we. Like my wife and I, having spent the last 4 months right on top of each other while we were bunking with the in-laws while our house was being worked on, now we're getting even more togetherness. And I think I might be getting on her nerves, Dave, and I'll tell you why. Yesterday, she was working on the first floor. I was working on the second floor. And I don't know what I had done to run afoul, but she calls from upstairs. She says, "Brad, do you ever get like a sharp shooting pain, like somebody's poking you with in a voodoo doll?" And I go, "No." She goes, "How about now?"
Oh my God, this vaudeville joke has been brought to you by the year 1890. The year 1890, proudly sponsoring ComicLab and that joke. Oh God. Brad's on stage with his violin. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. So listen, Dave, what I was thinking of, let's take people through a day. Let's start from morning and move our way all the way through to night. Let's take through some tips, tricks, advice, pitfalls to avoid in working from home, starting from that moment when your alarm rings and you open your little tender dough-like eyes.
Okay, so all of this advice is couched with the fact that Brad and I fail as much as we succeed. I mean, in the sense that be kind to yourself if you're new to this, because it does take, and I'm not joking about this, it does take some time. Sometimes months, sometimes a full year to get used to working from home because you have to rework how your mind adjusts to the day, right? Mm-hmm. So be kind to yourself. That's the caveat. So, but now we're going to throw a lot of things at you. So when I start the day, the big thing for me is sticking to a schedule. And I will be honest in that having everybody home and the kids suddenly homeschooling threw off my game, even after a decade. And I am only now in week 3 of quarantine readjusting and getting back on my game again. So I'm trying to be kind to myself about that. But the first thing to do is keep to a schedule. And by that, I mean, have a time that you wake up with every day. Because if you don't wake up at whatever time, 7, 7:30, 8, what happens is the bedtime starts to creep more and more. And so what was 11 becomes midnight, becomes 1, becomes 2, becomes finishing off Project Runway at 3 a.m. 2 weeks from now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it will creep on you. So you've got to keep a morning schedule. And then tacked on to that, my next suggestion is you've got to shower and get dressed as though you're going to a work day. Yeah. You can't mentally be in PJs for weeks on end. It's not good for you. It's not productive. It's not conducive to work. It is conducive towards feeling like every day is a Saturday, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't get any work done if you're in a Saturday mindset.
Yes. Now, that being said, I have opted for the comfiest set of T-shirts that I own to the point where my wife is like, we're on T-shirt 4 again, you know, that kind of thing. So because I'm rotating through, like back in the laundry, back out again in rotation, back in the laundry, back out again in rotation.
Oh, you're fancy. You got that laundry in the middle. That's wonderful.
Look at you with your high living over there with your detergent soap and all your fanciness. We don't go for that in the Geiger household.
No, but you're absolutely right. And like, I'm going to tack on to that. If you generally like had a commute for your day job and that's out the window now, you don't have to wake up at that same time. Give yourself,
No.
give
yourself a treat,
the joy of sleeping in a little bit, because that's a part of self-care too, is getting a little extra sleep during this time and recharging. But do set that alarm, even if it's moved back an hour from where it generally is. Do get up, do get dressed, do get showered. Get a good breakfast. Brew yourself a nice pot of coffee. And then get your day started. Just like you were going to go into work, just like you were, doing business as usual, because that really is important in your mindset.
Yep. And then here's my next thing. And Brad, you can chime in on this.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you are not used to working from home.
Yeah.
So every surface feels like it could be a work surface, right? Like I can work over on the couch. I can work on the coffee table. I can work at the dining room table. I can work in a chair sitting outside.
Right.
I'm going to advise against that. And here's what I'm going to suggest is that pick one corner of the house. And even if it's a small apartment, in my first apartment in Los Angeles, I used to have one corner of the master bedroom that was just a little desk.
Yeah.
And everything when you were facing that corner was mentally gearing you towards work. And then when I wanted to not be at work, I would go out to my living room, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of having one dedicated space is the other people in your life know when you are in that space that you are working.
Yes.
And it's a slowly teachable moment, but you've got to teach your kids, like, listen, when I'm over here, I'm working, okay?
Right.
And when I'm over here, I'm available for any questions, right? So it teaches the other people in your life that you're working. It also teaches your brain, your body, your physical response that now I am at work. Now I am not at work. Now I am at work, that kind of thing. Because if you don't, Brad, every activity starts to bleed into every other activity, don't you think?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You can easily kind of confuse yourself, and you can easily get into this thing where you're always working. Like, okay, I'm sitting here on the couch, but I can also be working. And that sounds great. We've been told in the last several years, that multitasking is the way to go, and you should always be doing something, and you should be grinding it out, and so forth.
But it's actually way less efficient, as any efficiency expert will tell you. You know, to multitask.
So I co-sign everything Dave said about having a corner that is your work corner, and also giving yourself the freedom mentally of saying, I'm going to walk away from this corner now, and I don't have to work when I'm away from this corner.
And that's key, because you and one way you can do that, Brad, is when you say, I'm going to move away from this corner or this spot in the house or this room in the house, whatever it is for you. When you move away from that, one of the ways that I help myself is by triggering reward systems of, like, if I get these 5 things on my to-do list done, then I can play a video game. Or if I get these 5 things done before lunch, then I can have lunch. And sometimes food is a very good motivator. Like, no, you can't go eat until you go finish these 5 things, And sometimes those 5 things are just like, send this email to so-and-so, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a big task.
But go back to that Jake Parker advice of having one thing every day you have one thing, and that's the one thing that's got to get done. And if you can get that done and move down the list, great. But you got to do that one thing. Remember that advice he had for us?
I do. And just to echo that, my big thing since I've been in quarantine is my big Jake Parker to-do list every day is try not to fall into existential dread. So that's my big to-do list for every day. And
do you put a little check mark next to that when you've managed it? Try not to fall into existential dread. Check.
Check.
Yeah, the problem is you better be making that check mark in pencil.
And the check mark keeps getting erased. So, no, but you're right. Have a big ticket item. But then, honestly, a self-administered reward system, it's imperfect. There's going to be times where you fail. And again, self-care, be kind to yourself. But it's at least better than loosey-goosey. If you have a self-administered reward system of, like, I get to play Red Dead Redemption if by 5 o'clock I've finished everything. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is a really good reward system, because here is the truth about working from home, and especially about working as a cartoonist, an independent self-owned cartoonists like Brad and I are, is you are your own boss. There's no one standing over you going, do this, do that, right?
Yeah.
You've got to get good at tricking yourself into being your own boss. And one of the ways you can do that is a reward system on a list that you don't get the reward until you do the 5 things, that kind of thing. So it's a cheap and easy trick to do. Brad, what would you say is the next bit of advice for how you go through your day?
Next bit of advice is okay, so here's the deal, especially if you're living with a family. There's always going to be something around the house to do. So now you're midway through the morning, you've started, you need an excuse to get up from the table or your corner and to walk around and stretch, because obviously if you sit there for too long, you're going to be doing yourself some health problems as well. So midway through the morning, you're getting stuff done, you need a break, get up and do one household thing that's going to keep the household going, whether it's moving a load of laundry or pulling the dishes out of the dishwasher. Do one thing, cleaning up that coffee that you brewed this morning. Do one or maybe 2 things, but don't get carried away. Don't let it become a distraction. Do a couple things that are household things, just as an excuse to move around and move your body, and then get back to work before lunch.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. And I, like Brad said, put the emphasis on a physical thing. Like if it's like, oh, I need to pay these bills.
Yeah.
That's not as exciting. You can do that at the end of the day. Try to move around a little bit. And I would also add in there that you really want to, and this is hard for all of us, myself very much included, is that you want to schedule in movement in your day.
Yeah.
Even if in times of quarantine, even if it's just a basic walk, a half-mile walk, or some light yoga, it's so critical to your body and to your mind and to your heart to get your blood flowing, to get everything pumping. And if you don't, it's very easy to become more and more stationary and to gain weight. Have I had my share of years where I'm like, well, I started the year at this weight and now I'm 20 pounds heavier. Well, now I'm 10 pounds heavier than that. Now I'm, and so I really let myself go a couple years ago during the house move. And boy, you would think that a move would be a time for losing weight because you're moving around a lot and boxing a lot of things. Papa let himself go, and I was up very, very high in a dangerous level. And so this is me as a friend saying to you in a non-judgmental way, not about weight, but about health. Like keep your body moving, keep your heart pumping, because it will help your creativity. It'll help your mind, especially in times of stress and anxiety. Exercise is so key. So don't let that fall by the wayside, Brad.
Right. And now we're up to lunchtime, and my advice here is have lunch. And I know that sounds dumb, but it actually isn't. There's a tendency when you're working from home to graze all day. And you're always eating crap when you're grazing all day. You crack open a box of cookies, or you
these wheat thins aren't going to eat themselves, Brad. I got to help.
Exactly. Or you get into the Cheez-Its or whatever. Giving yourself a little snack is perfectly fine, but don't get into this habit of grazing all day. Have a lunch time where you sit down and have a good, healthy lunch. And have something that's gonna get some protein in there. That's gonna tide you over and keep you from getting hungry in another 10, 15 minutes. Have some water, hydrate. And obviously give yourself a little snack here and there, but have a lunch time where you have a good, healthy lunch, and so that you're not grazing throughout the day.
Yeah, and a lot of this is, I'm realizing that we are sounding like your mom in that but here's the thing, is that all that stuff that you learned in kindergarten is the guiding post for your life. And I'm telling you from my own experience, it's very easy to fall down a rat hole of sleeping too late, not showering, grazing all day, not exercising. I'm telling you sincerely, I let myself get 60 pounds heavier than I needed to because I fell into a lot of bad habits because I didn't have a boss. I didn't have anywhere I needed to be. I didn't have to look good for anyone because I was working from home. And so it's really easy to let it slide from working from home. So Brad's thing about eating right, eating protein, eating healthy snack in the middle of the day, like carrots and stuff like that, rather than some cheap carb. It is, I know it makes us sound like your mom, but it is... We're trying to say, learn from our experience that this is the healthful way to go through a day. And I fail. I continually fail on that all the time. I'm much better than I was 5 years ago at this. But we're saying this as a point or a place from love that you got to consciously keep track and take care of your body as you go through this day. So, all right. So now we're actually working. And here's one thing I will say. If you're like me and you're homeschooling kids and you're also, your spouse is also working from home, my other thing is if you allow and schedule, like this is now my time, headphones can be your friend.
Yes.
Put on some light Mozart piano or whatever it is for you that helps you work. And block out the signals of your family doing this or that you would normally walk out and be like, what's going on out here? That kind of thing. Then that could be your friend. Don't you think, Brad? I mean, I don't tend to love headphones, but in a time of crowded houses, it can be your friend.
Yeah, Dave, and everybody's different on this, so I'm going to throw out a couple of different ideas because everybody's brain works differently. Number one, when you got your headphones on, music might be too distracting, and I would suggest, perhaps if that's you, white noise, and you can find all kinds of different sources.
Oh, great idea!
For
yes,
white noise. Yeah, because I'll literally because I get distracted by anything. I get distracted by certain types of music, so sometimes I'll listen to basically static, just because it's enough white noise that it blocks out the other stuff. And I can concentrate, right? It's just me and the voices in my head.
God bless America.
Now, alternatively, like Dave said, Mozart, that's also a good choice. Why? Because it doesn't have words. And
yes, lyrics are a key problem with writing. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, because you start following the words, and because we're narrative minded, we start thinking about the story that's being told in the words, and we get completely sidetracked by that. So I would also if white noise isn't your jam, then maybe instrumental music, soundtracks to movies, or Mozart. There's a wide range of non-lyric music. And then I always go back to that story about Stefan Pastis working on his syndicated comic, Pearls Before Swine, and he listens to like heavy metal.
Yeah, like grindingly heavy metal.
Yeah,
because that's almost the
up.
other spectrum. Yeah, it's almost the other spectrum of like Mozart piano is really soft, non-lyrical. The grinding heavy metal is so far on the other spectrum that I think that allows his brain to unlock as well. Because your mind kind of detaches from whatever narrative your mind is currently telling yourself, that kind of thing. So that I found that one to be because it's so different than how I do it that I found it interesting when he told me that. But and then I think the final stage, two final things I think I would offer, and Brad I'm sure has more. One is, in addition to a daily schedule for workout and regimen, try to give yourself a weekly to-do list. And again, self-care is your friend. Be kind to yourself if you're not meeting these to-do lists in these first weeks, because the world is literally falling apart. So be kind to yourself in the first weeks. But try to say, I'm going to do 3 of this comic page or this or 4 comic strips, or I'm going to do a page a week, whatever it is for you. Try to set and stick to some kind of schedule. That's helpful. And then I think as my own final point, and Brad, again, will have more, my own final point is when you leave work, really try to leave work.
Yeah.
Because check in with the people in your life, whether it's FaceTiming family, whether it's calling people, whether it's turning around to the people that are sharing quarantine with you, roommates or friends or family, and be with them, truly be with them. Put your phone down. Again, I fail at this all the time, but those are the moments that fire up the human heart, is true connection. And so let yourself have those. Because, and again, if you let work bleed into personal life, then everything starts to bleed into everything, and it becomes like a terrible soup where it's all melded together,
Yep.
So anyway, Brad, what are your final thoughts on the day? How do you end your day?
We're closing in. We've gotten through the afternoon. We've gotten some work done. We've focused really well.
Oh, I jumped too far ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm bringing it back to our clock. We're gonna head into dinner. And again, this is family time. If you've got a family, this is the time to walk away from your workspace. Yep. And the stuff that you got done, you got done. And the stuff that you didn't, you didn't. And it'll be there tomorrow, and you'll get it done tomorrow. Okay. What I'm saying is much in the same vein as what Dave was saying. be present, have dinner with your family, put the screens down. We tend to have we're not strict about a lot of stuff, but one thing is we've got no electronic devices at the dinner table. We want to talk with each other, even though we've got two teenage boys. Oh my God,
you and I are the same person because we use that same phrase in our house. No devices at the table, everyone.
And even we want to talk to each other, even though with two teenage boys, that talk usually devolves into an argument or a pissing match or something. And then we wish that just get your devices out again, as long as it means you're not talking to each other.
Everybody gets an hour. I gotta go.
Yes. But then, we've fallen into a really nice thing, and I would be lying if I said that this was me consistently over the last 7 or 8 years that I've been self-employed. Because a lot of times I'd turn right around and go back right upstairs, and it was not a good habit to get into, to go right back to work. But we've gotten into a nice little habit so far. After dinner, we all clean up, we all get the kitchen back in order and everything, and then we've been getting out a game. Like recently, we've rediscovered a game. It's a card game called Boss Monster. I think you guys. Oh
yeah, you gifted that to our family, Brad.
Oh yeah, I love that. And
that's a great game.
We've gone back and started playing that again, and then and then at that point, then the kids want to go back to their own corners and FaceTime with their friends or do whatever that they're interested in doing. And then Carolyn and I have been curling up on the couch, and we haven't done
Here
this.
we go.
Bow, chicka, bow, bow. We haven't done this in years, and it's been really nice. She got really interested in the new CBS series Picard, and she heard that they were releasing that, for the free trial and everything.
Yeah.
And so we for the last several nights, we sat down and binged Picard together. It's been really enjoyable, and I might not have gotten as much work done this week as I would have if I would have turned around and tromped right back upstairs and sat down at my little workstation in the corner of my bedroom. But I'm happier, and when I'm doing my work, I'm a little bit more focused on it. Because I gave my brain a chance to rebound and stuff like that. My biggest thing is that now we got to find something else that Carolyn and I both want to watch. And I'm trying to get her interested in Tiger King, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm on my second way through on that. I watched it once and I'm on the second time. But we got to. But I guess what I'm trying to say is. Give yourself that downtime in the evening. I know, especially when you're panicked, especially when you're like, I've got to get this and I got to get this and I got to get this. The idea, you want to go back and chain yourself to the drawing board. And maybe your personal situation, you got to do that a little bit. But even if that's you, find a little bit of time to give yourself a bounce back time, a refraction period where you can recover from being, let's face it, being creative is, in my opinion, the brain at 100%. Making something out of nothing is the highest level of human. Really?
This is my favorite. No, I gotta say this with love. This is my favorite aspect of you when you start talking about creativity, because this is what it always sounds like from my perspective, Brad. You're like, I gotta tell you, being creative is like peak physical ability. That's like, oh, my body is humming. I'm like, it's like you describing yourself as like Superman. Like, I gotta tell you, I'm in peak physical shape when I'm creatively creating. Oh boy, look at me. It's like you're flexing on Venice Beach or something,
Except I'm not necessarily talking about me. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about people who are creative. I really do think.
I know. I'm just saying, like, it's so funny. The way we talk about ourselves is revealing a lot, you know?
Yeah. Well, listen, all you got to do, Google me sometime. You'll see I never got to flex a whole lot in life in the real sense. So this is as close to a flex as I'm ever going to get.
That makes me love you even more. Listen, let me have this, you bastard.
Yeah, no shit. And then, so now it's, you son of a gun. But now the sun's getting low, a big guy, as they say, and it's getting to be bedtime. And
I know that reference.
Yeah, thank you very much. And give yourself a bedtime. Seriously, don't. Here's the thing not to do, and it's the thing that we all do. Don't lay in bed scrolling through social media, especially social media, because there's nothing but bad news out on social media. And a lot of, let's face it, a lot of misinformation that can get you running in circles. Find your happy place. Find a place that you can, if you do scroll, get an ebook, get an audio book. Get some nice fantasy, something that's out there that's not reality. There's a lot of places that you're going to get news and information. Don't sit there and do that the last thing before going to bed. Have a bedtime, lay down in bed, turn your device off, stare into the night sky for a little bit or into the at the bedroom ceiling, go to bed. Turn your brain off. You know, even if you're, I'm not sleepy. Just lie there, like I tell my kids, just lie there and shut your eyes. You'll be asleep before you know it. Give yourself a bedtime, a good bedtime. Get yourself a good 8 hours. And then you'll wake up the next morning, open up those doe-like eyes, and you're going to do it all over again, maybe even a little bit better than the day before.
Yep. And I will say this as a parent who is trying to figure out how to balance homeschooling and work, right? This is my new challenge.
Yeah.
And my kids are younger than Brad, so I will be honest, there is a marked difference between my older one and my younger one in terms of how productive my day can be when I'm homeschooling. But I have reverted to an old habit, and it's working for me thus far in quarantine. But remember how Brad and I said, when you're done with work, go be with your family, spend quality time, right? And so I do that, but then I have allowed myself in it's not ideal, but it's working for now within the context of my homeschool and quarantine life, is that I'm letting bedtimes be my friend. When everyone else goes to bed, I allow myself 2-3 more hours to work between 9 and midnight or 8:30 and midnight, whatever it is, because there are times where work gives me the accomplishment and the sense of well-being that I need to tackle the next day. So if I didn't get anything done because I was homeschooling or wrestling little ones to, get them going, then that night I say, what a lovely 3 to 4 hours we've had as family time, dinner, game night. We did a dance-off while we washed the dishes. That was really fun. And now everyone's in bed, and so Papa's going to go back to his drawing desk and do another couple. And I did that last night. I did a Sheldon between 9:30 and midnight and got the file to Beth, and so she'll have that this morning, because otherwise she wouldn't have had anything to color this morning when she woke up, because we'd be podcasting, and so I wouldn't be able to do it right now. And so I did it last night. And anyway, what I'm saying is that gives me a sense of well-being. It's not ideal to have a work hour that continues after everybody else goes to bed, but for me, it's what I need to do right now to keep life and work separated and to keep my workflow going. So that's another possibility, to let bedtimes be your friend.
Yeah. And not only that, but I think you tied it up on the perfect note, because what you're actually saying there is be flexible. In other words, Dave and I just outlined an entire day for you. And you might be saying, oh my gosh, my days don't look anything like that. And I can imagine them looking anything like that. I've got younger kids than Dave's yet. They require
it's even worse.
More. The underlying note there is that really what we just said, you should not be writing down word for word and trying to follow it like it's the gospel. What you should be doing is taking the essence of that, the ideas behind where we're going with that, and seeing how you can put them into your own reality. And the key word there is, like Dave just said, flexibility. Your day is going to be completely different, most likely, and that's okay. But try to get some of those ideas in, those ideas of self-care, those ideas of schedule and ritual, those ideas of mindset. That's the real thing. It's not. I don't care whether you eat lunch at 12 o'clock or at 1:15. The idea is self-care, right? And that goes all the way throughout. And be flexible. Your day is going to look very different than Dave's. Dave's day is going to look very different than mine, and right on down the line.
Yep.
You have to be flexible. You got to have the 2 F's of COVID planning: flexible and forgiving. you were going to love that.
Oh, jeez. You gotta make everything into a letter form. It's like, all right, guys, welcome back to Sesame Street. Don't forget about the 2 F's of working in quarantine. Flexible and forgiving. And friendship. You're going to want to throw friendship in there, so make sure you're FaceTiming. All right, so that's 4 F's. So flexible, forgiving, FaceTime, and friendship.
Seeing as how I can never remember all of my letter acronym things, I was just going to make the 3rd F forgetfulness and just use it as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Oh, God, I love you and your letter forms. It's so great. So I will bookend this. Brad has said the best thing. Be forgiving, be flexible. And I will bookend this with the way I started it, too. Be kind to yourself. We are all doing our best. Don't listen to my day and think like, oh, Dave's got it figured out. Oh, my God, if you could see a peak on my average day lately, it's been me trying to hold it together with a finger in the dike as the water is flowing over, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm doing my best. I know from the phone calls with Brad's doing his best. We're all doing our best, right?
Yeah.
If you could, and by the way, if you could peek back in 1606 to see Shakespeare getting the hell out of London to go write Macbeth, it's not like every day was perfect, you know?
Right.
There was a lot of days where he's like, I gotta get grain. What do I do? And then he'd squeeze in a little bit of writing in Macbeth in that month. Or, Newton getting the heck out of Cambridge or Oxford or wherever he was and going to work on calculus. It wasn't an ideal situation for him either. So be kind to yourself.
Well, and look at Stan and Jack. They've made the decision to do Fantastic Four. Now they've got to ink it. Now they got to color it. Now it's got to go out. They had another month and a half before they knew that they had a hit. That was a lot of doubt that was hanging over their heads.
And a lot of bills hanging over their head in the meantime,
And they had to persevere through that. And there are no guarantees, and we're gonna get to that in the second half of the show. There are no guarantees, but you do have to keep your focus on. Oh, there you go. Flexibility.
Oh, God damn, he found another one.
Forgivingness.
He found another one.
Friendliness and I forgot it already. And
focus.
Focus.
Oh, God. This is you at your most Susan McTaggart. It's just that the damn letter forms. All right, everybody, we're talking about how to survive coronavirus. Don't forget flexibility, forgiveness, focus, friendship, and FaceTime. The 5 F's of the Susan McTaggart system.
The thing that kills me is you remember him better than I do, and I'm the one that's coming up with this shit.
You become like the guy on the Andy Griffith show. You're like, well, I forgiveness and friendship and.
I become Floyd the Barber. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. I could, Floyd the Barber. There's the other one. So don't forget the 6 F's of coronavirus cartooning: flexibility, forgiveness, friendship, FaceTime, focus, and Floyd the Barber. If you have those 6, then you're good to go. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Hey, and here's a little reminder. This show is being brought to you by our sponsor, Wacom, the creators of the Wacom One. This is a new product that Wacom has that is a super portable version of their drawing tablet. Dave and I both have one, and I got to tell you, Dave, one of the things that has made this quarantine, this shelter-in-place order more doable for me has been the fact that I've got a Wacom One here. I was able to set up a little workspace in the corner of the bedroom. I've got my Wacom One right here. connected to a laptop. It works beautifully. And again, like I think we said earlier, the screen's a little bit bigger than the one that I used to use. It's a surprisingly large screen for such a small tablet. It's all screen. And I don't know what I would be doing with this COVID crisis without my Wacom One.
Yeah, the ability to have that in place with you has been with me has been key. And I got to tell you, I don't see. And if you're new to Wacom or new to a drawing with a Cintiq or with a digital tablet,
Yeah.
As a pro-am or amateur or even pro level device, it is admittedly on the lower price spectrum for Wacom. It's very affordably priced at $400. But I don't know that I'm missing any major functionality from my big one when I'm drawing on it. It's
No.
a really nice product. So we thank Wacom as our sponsor this week over at Wacom at wacom.com and the new Wacom One. And Bradley J. Geiger, let's jump into our next topic.
Looks like we're going to be doing an all COVID show today. Are you okay with that, Dave?
I'm okay with that. It is. You know why? It's top of mind for everybody. So let's just talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I've got a little bit of
And
good
in
news.
this case, the elephant in the room is me. I got to put these Oreos down.
You're not quite there yet. You're doing fine. Remember, forgiveness and flexibility. Those are your two.
Well, we have flexibility, fitness, for the barber.
So now listen, Dave, here's a couple things that we need to keep in mind with the COVID crisis. And first of all, I want to share with you this that came across my social media about Patreon, because we've all been watching, particularly Patreon, to see how that's going to go this month. And we do have to put the caveat here. We're taking a little bit of a risk jinxing ourselves. Today's March 31st when we are recording this, but so far Patreon seems to be holding pretty steady.
Oh, and, Brad, knock on wood. Knock on wood.
I'm knocking. But Patreon themselves have released this from their blog. Over 30,000 creators joined Patreon this month.
What? Is that true?
Yes. Well, that's what they're saying. And they're saying not only are those 30,000 new creators launching on Patreon in March, but a bunch of their followers are coming right along with them. In other words, not only did they have 30,000 new creators, but they had a big spike in people signing up for Patreon for the first time.
Wow.
Listen to this.
Wow.
According to Patreon's internal metrics, the average new patron growth across the US, UK, Canada, and Germany, and Australia and Italy is up 36.2% in March compared to February.
God bless that's a huge growth. 36%?
Yeah. That's and so basically what they're saying is new creators are signing up on Patreon at a huge number, and those people are bringing their audience. Their audience is signing up on Patreon. And remember, like we've said in the past, one of the reasons that we both recommend Patreon is because it's the leader in this type of crowdfunding. That person that was brought in by one of those 30,000 is now much more apt to, at one point in the future, become a backer of mine,
right?
Because they're already signed up. There's no barrier to entry. So this is one of those rising tide lifts all ships situations, perhaps.
Yep. I am astounded by that number, Brad. 30% growth of artists and 36% growth in patrons is what you said?
Yep. Well, a 36% growth in average new patron growth.
Average new patron. So is that different than actual patrons signing up?
That's that average new patron growth. In other words, you're getting people to sign up to Patreon for the first time. That's a new patron.
Separate from business, Brad, isn't that affirming that people in moments that are getting tricky, they're like, I value and appreciate what art does for my life. And in this moment of stress, I'm going to support the artists that give me the escape that I need from the daily news, you know?
Yeah.
God, I bless those people. That is really great that people are jumping in. That in terrible moments when people rise to the occasion, gosh, that makes me feel good about humanity. And that's really lovely that people are backing the things they like.
it's something that I've been seeing throughout March, and I have to admit, because on the other hand, you've got people making, life decisions. I've got to cut back. I've got a budget. I've got to make sure I've got to get my groceries and all this other stuff. And so I've seen a much larger churn towards the end of the month than I typically see. But at the same time, I've also seen a whole lot of people coming in, as many people who are saying, listen, I've got to tighten my belt. I'll be back. Now, I get that message in my exit interviews a lot. Got to tighten my belt, but I'll be back. Don't worry.
Yep, I've had
I'm
that.
also getting a whole lot of other people saying, "Hey, I'm going to have a little time on my hands here."
I know.
And the thing we see this comment on social media all the time. They're saying, take a good close look at what you're turning to during this time. You're turning to the arts, whether it's the entertainment arts on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, or whether you're turning to a book or whether you're turning to a comic or whether you're turning to music. You're turning to the arts. And I've got a lot of, as many people who are jumping out because of real world decision making, I've got an equal, if not maybe a little bit greater people who are either a couple of them increase their pledge because they were like, hey, I know it's going to be tight. I can increase my pledge. I'm going to do that. Or people jumping in for the very first time saying, I'm sitting here staring at the four walls. I want something to get me through this. And this is where Patreon is excelling.
Yeah. And I would like to say a couple things about people that have to step away for real world reasons, and also people that are jumping in saying, "I appreciate the arts in this shitty moment, and so here's a couple bucks."
Yeah.
So two things. One, this moment where people have to step away. If you are going to respond at all, please embed it and imbue it with kindness. Tell them this moment will pass, and in the meantime, all your comics remind them they're all free to read. Jump in, take the escape that your comics can offer. I always tell people, look, there's 4,000 Sheldons that are free to read. Read them at your leisure. We'll see each other again in brighter days. And this is not a moment for business. This is a moment for you to be a good human. And these are people that, if they are stepping away from a $2, $3 pledge on Patreon, they are hurting and they are scared, So take this moment to say, in whatever small way you can as an artist, this will pass, this will be okay. In the meantime, enjoy my comics. You are literally giving someone an escape from the terrible moment of reality, and there's going to be a lot of people that are facing that. And so in a non-business way, please take my advice and approach it with such kindness and remind them that your comics are free to read and to enjoy them as much as they would like, and that you'll see them again in brighter days, and it's okay. Because that's a person that needs a kind word and needs a kindness directed towards them. We've all been in that place, and God willing, we hope we won't happen again, but we might yet be in that place again. And so kindness goes so far in this moment as just a human to human level, right? So that's number one. The second one is, it is an amazing thing when people are in a stressful, world-changing moment and they go to support artists. So try to go the extra mile for the people that are sticking with you on Patreon, right? And I know that's hard because we're all trying to keep our heads above water with homeschooling and with quarantine and new healthcare, and suddenly we're all washing our hands 40 times a day. So there's a lot of distraction, right? But now that I'm kind of pulling out of my haze of the first 3 weeks of quarantine, I'm like, what can I do to say thank you to my Patreon backers? And that's the next thing, right? And then my third thought is this. Is that I don't know if anybody's noticed, I'm going to start doing it once a week or once every 2 weeks. I have been releasing my ebooks free to read for the world because, again, the reason why we become artists is, one, because we love creating art, but it's also to help. You want to make the world a better place than when you got here, right? And so this is a moment for your humanity to shine through. Give away some of your work for free because God knows you don't know what life you might be saving in a dark moment when you can help make them laugh or help entertain them or distract them. So think about what you might be able to give away separate from your website in the months and year to come, because this is a moment to shine in our humanity as artists. And so I'm going to try every couple of weeks to release. I have 16 ebooks of Sheldon books. I'm going to try to give away one every 2 weeks or so. And I think that'll last for most of the year that we have ahead of us. But Brad, what are your thoughts about how to approach Patreon right now and how to approach this moment of people leaving? How do you handle it?
I see. Typically, I don't send anybody a note when they jump out, mainly because it's kind of hard to tell exactly since you don't know who the exit interview is coming
Oh, yeah, yeah,
from
yeah. Agreed. You know
specifically.
what?
You
I should have
can't.
said this. I should have said this better. It's people that literally reached out saying, "Dave,
Oh,
I have to
yeah,
step away."
yeah.
Those
No,
are the
look,
ones I respond to. Yeah.
listen. Those 9 chances out of 10, I'm going to set them up with a little something. Like I'll send them something directly too. It's like, yeah, listen, I know, I totally get it. Here's a little something to get you through, and we're going to circle back and we're going to be together again a little
Right.
bit later. But you're good for now. Don't worry. It's all. I always tell people, you're never. I never expected you to join in the first place. I'm thrilled that you were here for a month or for 2 months.
Right. Right.
You're not. You don't owe me nothing past that first month. I'm super thrilled that you're here. So yeah, there's definitely that. But I think, and also, listen, I know Patreon is going to remind you to kind of remind people that about the community, the aspect of community, and that your support is making this happen and stuff. I think that's a good idea, but I would be really, really careful with that because you don't want to get into the guilt trip kind of zone where it's like,
No.
oh,
No.
I'm able to keep the lights on because of you and stuff like that. I get that, but I would much rather emphasize community as always. Emphasize that this is something, a community that we built together.
Hmm.
I wouldn't, for me, my personal druthers is I wouldn't emphasize support that much because remember, this person in this moment has to worry about supporting themselves as well. So, emphasize community and then go back to what Dave and I see Chris Hellbeck doing this. I see a lot of people doing this, releasing what you can as a free ebook, free downloads, redoubling your effort to play that role that we as cartoonists play during times of crisis, and that is to distract people, to get them to stop looking at press conferences and social media outrage and
Right.
all this other stuff
Right.
that's swirling around our heads. Give them a break from that, and the mental health benefits of that are immense.
Yeah. And so I'm floored by the fact that there's been a 36% growth in Patreon. I find that
Yeah,
really encouraging on a basic human level. And it makes me frankly, Brad, in this moment, we haven't talked about this, but it makes
yeah,
me reevaluate that maybe in the coming year I need to put even more emphasis on Patreon. And I know that maybe sounds silly in the context of this conversation, but because it sounds obvious, but
yeah.
I honestly hadn't considered it until this moment that maybe that is my way out of surviving this financial year to come is more of an emphasis on Patreon. So,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. And as
uh,
long as we're talking about Patreon, I want to mention before we move on to our next topic, Dave. So some people are getting hit a little bit by this, and they're suffering a little bit of a hardship. And again, I've said in the past how I'm unabashedly a pro Patreon cheerleader. I make no bones about it. I am unashamed that I am gonna be pro Patreon for a long, long time. Because they keep doing stuff like this. Patreon has created a fund to help creators that are being hurt by this COVID crisis. Okay, it's called What the Fund, and if you're in need of help because your Patreon is dipping during this time, you can apply for a grant from Patreon to kind of get you through. The deadline is April 14th. The URL was really long, but I made this the top story on webcomics.com. And it'll still be within the top 2 or 3 by the time this podcast comes out. And I didn't make it a paywalled article. So go to webcomics.com, scroll down, you'll see the story right there. You'll have the link. It's a lot easier than me trying to go through all that URL. And go if this is you, if you're having some trouble. Patreon has actually set up a fund to help people who are struggling during this time. And if that doesn't tell you, in my opinion, everything you need to know about Patreon as a group, I don't know what it takes.
right. And I'm going to add on to Brad's wonderful thought about the fund from Patreon, which
Yeah,
is this. Um, This is your opportunity, if you are at all have the means to do so. I would strongly advise you, human to human, and I'm not doing this in a self-serving way. Don't pick me, but find an artist that you can just sense is having a tough time financially or is struggling in this moment of quarantine. You can sense from their social media presence that either their spouse got laid off or something, and just quietly back them. These are the moments where you, as a fan of an artist, can make a big difference in their life. And there's going to be some people that need it much more than others. So
Yeah.
I'm actively looking around at the moment of my social feed, and Brad and I can talk after the show to see what artists we know that might need a few extra dollars. And just quietly support them because this is a moment where some people will really, really need the help. And so, separate from Patreon's fund,
Yeah.
pick someone, and not me, pick someone that might really need it, and maybe support them during the next month or two. And you can switch it up as we have said in the past.
Yeah.
Go with somebody for a month or two, and then switch to somebody else. But I think that just have that thought in your mind if you have the ability to maybe back an artist that you wouldn't normally back, but you can tell needs it, needs the help, needs a helping
Mhm.
hand. I think that kindness could go a long way.
Absolutely. So, Dave, I know that this is another topic that you wanted to cover in our COVID show today, and it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart. Writing in times of grief. In other words, what we're hearing from a lot of creative people right now is I desperately need to be creative right now. I need to keep the comic going. I need to be putting work out. But holy moly, is it ever tough to be creative when
Yeah.
you're distracted by the level of stuff that we're being distracted by right now in the news? What advice can you give people, Dave, for dealing with this very difficult time and still being creative?
Well, this is, yeah, I really want to talk about this because, the mood that a lot of us are facing is grief because we're grieving for the life we used to have. We're grieving for the potential
Yeah.
futures that might come our way. We're
Mhm.
grieving for the people that are currently dying or suffering. And grief is a very real and very strong emotion. And we're also feeling tremendous amounts of anxiety,
Yeah.
surrounding that grief. So we can all acknowledge that. I have had some really shitty nights in the last few weeks, and some very I don't know how to say it other than unproductive. I've had a lot of unproductive days where
Oh, yeah.
you would think that I would have tons of hours being at home and can get all this stuff done, and for whatever reason, I go to bed that night going, "Well, I accomplished nothing." Right? So,
Yeah, I've been there.
yeah. So let's all just acknowledge right up front that we're all sharing that same spot, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk for a bit about being creative in a moment of grief.
Yeah.
It's okay that this is happening, that it's hard to be creative
Hmm.
because if you're familiar at all with like Maslow's hierarchies of needs,
Yeah.
that old psychological construct that basically says the baseline thing you need to do is to feel safe, to have food, to have shelter, and to be out of the rain. That's the baseline need
Hmm.
that your body needs, right? And then you move up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the top, once you feel safe, once you feel warm, once you feel socially connected to everybody in your life, then you can create, right? That's
Yeah.
sort of near the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is creativity towards the top.
Hmm.
And so from a basic psychological standpoint, you can see why we're all of us, the bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is being shaken up right now.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know about my sources of food. I don't
Right.
know about how the hell I can go outside safely. I don't know how I can do any of this, right? And so just acknowledge that all of us are facing that same shaking up of basic human life assumptions. And it's scary as hell, right?
Yes,
We're
it
all
is.
scared. And so that's hard. But the way that I have tried in past moments of grief has helped me a little bit in this one because, like, say a family member has died, it's really hard for me to write a Sheldon after going to a funeral.
Yeah.
And this is sincere, Brad. I've had times where like I was on the road because of a family funeral, and I'm driving in my car back, and I'm like, how the hell do I write a Sheldon today? Like,
Right.
where is my joy? Where is my ability to be goofy in this moment where I'm grieving for a loved one having died, right?
Yeah.
And so a version of that can inform us here. And so what I've done in the past is there's two things that I do to try to be creative in a moment of grief. One is to let my past let my past help me,
Yeah.
and the other one is to let my heroes help me.
Mm.
So let's talk about the first one first. So you know that I don't remember what the source of the quote is, but there's that quote, Brad, that the past is a vacation. Like if you're in a terrible moment, the past is a vacation. You can let your mind go back to your memories and you feel happier, you feel escape, you feel that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So what I also do is I let my archives help me write today
Hmm.
because I reread what Dave in Happier Moments has written. What triggered goofiness and fun for me 3 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was.
Wow.
And so rereading my own archives, I can go, "Oh, I know that mood. I remember that, Dave.
Yeah.
I remember how to capture that goofiness," right? And it a little bit helps shake you out of the funk and get you back towards a creative, joy-filled place, right? Is reading your own
Yeah.
archives. So letting your past help you. And then the other one is let your heroes help you. So I'm right now starting back in on Brad's favorite book, Dune, from Frank Herbert. Brad loves it. Can't say enough nice things about
Oh
it.
my God. I get it. It's hot.
No, I say that jokingly because it is my it's hot. God damn it.
I got to the midway part on that book. I shut it and I said, I get it. It's hot. And I threw the book and I never came back.
I get it. There's a lot of sand throw.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So anyway, what I'm getting at is for me, Dune is a favorite in the same way that Tolkien is a favorite. And there's true escapism there and there's
Yeah.
true joy when I read it. And so going back through my own heroes, and for Brad, it's certain comics, it's certain novels. For me, it's Dune or Tolkien or that kind of thing. Escaping back into work that made you want to create in the first place is really helpful in moments of grief. It reminds you of happier times and it reminds you of that creative feeling. Brad, what do you do to create in moments of grief
Oh.
where everything seems like it's so hard to create?
You know what? Up until now, I was just trying to push through it. I was nowhere as near as good at dealing with this as you. I've got two really good strategies now that I didn't have before. My strategy was denial. Push all. It comes from being raised Roman Catholic. Push all that stuff down. Push it down.
Oh, Brad, I can tell you from my Irish heritage, I'm very familiar with this. Yes, push it way down. That's yes.
And it's not there, and then you can do it. No, I honest to God, if you would have asked me how I got through those times, I don't know. I know you think denial is a joke answer. Aside from denial, I had nothing. I really like your ideas. I'm so bad on this topic. I got nothing to add.
Yeah, no, denial definitely works. And
It's
no,
not.
I'm not.
It's not
Again,
great,
I'm not
but
joking.
it works.
Denial works. My own caveat, though, is that it works, but it works short term. It's
Yeah.
really hard to do it for a month. Denial, because it'll come crashing down, and you will have a night where you're just weeping to yourself at 2 a.m. And that's fine. We're also going to have that too, by the way.
Yeah.
So let's all just share that moment.
Yeah.
Denial can work, but it's a good short term thing. Another thing that I would recommend is. And this, my friend Fred Schroeder and I have been alternately advising each other to do this when we can sense that the other one is having a breakdown. Is give yourself a quarantine from news for a day or two.
Oh God, yes.
Even if it's for a day, honest to God, you will find your blood pressure go down. You will find your stress levels go down. You'll find that you're honestly singing around the house a little bit more. Just give yourself one day because what I've come to the conclusion is once I have all the information that I need to make actionable decisions to keep myself and my family safe, after that, at a certain point, you're just causing self-harm by reading more news,
Yes.
What do I gain by reading how bad it is in the Milan region of Italy right now? Like, how does that help my life? I'm
It
just
does.
making myself sad and panicking, right? So I'll every I don't know 5 to 7 days I'll give myself a day off the news, and boy, it makes a noticeable difference, Brad.
Yeah.
Both on a physical level and an emotional level. I feel my body being better on those days, and so I've done that. And then another one that I do is allow myself moments of entertainment binging. I don't normally play video games because I consider them a waste of time. But boy, last week or two, I've been saying, you know what? Papa needs a little bit of escapism, and so Papa's gonna go sit and play a video game for 2-3 hours.
And what has your favorite video game been to come back to?
You're gonna love this joke that I have coming.
Yeah.
My go-to game at the moment is Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead
Wow.
Redemption. Good God, that's chewy.
I would have never guessed that.
It's not the Dave Kellett wheelhouse. Normally
Yeah.
it's like, what's a happy fun adventure? That
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I'm really enjoying stealing people's horses and robbing people at the crossroads. And my favorite joke lately is when my wife is kind of snuggling and kind of half falling asleep in bed. I give her a little peck on the cheek and I go, I got to go see a man about a horse. And it's true. I do have to go see a man about a horse. And she, every time I use that joke, she goes, you did it. You got there. You did the joke.
It's good to have that affirmation. You need somebody giving you affirmation in life.
My running bit with my wife is I've been describing her in great detail that she could care less about what the previous night's adventure was. Like, honey, I stole this horse. It was a beautiful Palomino. It had to be worth $140. I rode it all the way into town. I get there. The son of a bitch said because I didn't have papers, he could only give me $2 for it. Glo, can you believe that? It was a $150 horse and he only gave me $2. And no human eye roll has ever been more omnipresent than my wife's eye roll. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry that your horse only fetched you $2.
Oh my God. No, you know what? I'm going to have to try that. I haven't played the last video games that I've gotten involved in has been like iPhone games like Plants vs. Zombies and stuff like that. But I don't stick with that stuff long. I might have to try it.
For me, Horizon Zero Dawn, what a delightful game, and Red Dead Redemption, boy, great escapism, good stories, great art, and just fun. So, but anyway, writing in moments of grief, also acknowledge that there's going to be wasted days. There's going to be days where you're staring at the ceiling going, that existential dread is real, and it's hard to fully shake off on days where it's bad. So just acknowledge that you're not alone in this moment. All of us are feeling that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay to communicate. Don't be omnipresent with it, but sometimes it's okay to communicate to your audience that, hey, gang, just having a tough day. That's okay too. As entertainers, you want to kind of limit that because you don't want to add to people's own dread. But it's okay to acknowledge a human moment. I think, Brad, don't you think?
Yeah.
From time to time?
I was just going to say within limits. You don't want to do that type of thing too much. But if every now and again, if it's going to make you feel a little bit better, just to admit to the world, today's a bad day. Send me pictures of kittens. Just something. That's allowable. You can do that. I wouldn't allow yourself to do that too often. But when you need it, you need it. So listen, Dave. Let's get down to brass tacks here. We've done, we've done plenty of show here. We've done a lot of show. I've got one more topic I want to throw at you because it's the topic that's on everybody's mind. And that is, this is great. Work from home advice is great. Writing through grief. I'm glad to hear that Patreon's got my back. But the question that everybody's grappling with right now is, how do I make money happen right now? As an artist, as a comics artist, as a cartoonist, I need to bring some money in right now. And that's the burning question. And do we have advice for people on doing that? How do I make money happen now?
Well, so my big picture advice is that getting entrepreneurial and getting scrappy is going to be necessary for all of us in the coming year.
Yes.
And also that more numerous and smaller purchases or points of transaction are going to be a saving grace for us in this time, right?
Yes.
And so I feel like if I were to launch one of my beautiful $50 Drive hardcovers right now, it would do okay, but it's not going to do great because everyone's going to be like, do I need to spend $50 right now on a hardcover? That's not where people's minds are. But if you have smaller items that are a more discrete number, $2, $3, $5, $8, those are going to be a good way to parlay the moment. Like, you basically have to look at the world and go, all right, read the room. Does anybody want to throw down $50 for a hardcover right now? No. Could I even produce a $50 hardcover and ship it out to people in a way that's workable right now? No. All right, so then let's do smaller items. You can either do digital items, you can do pins, stickers, small prints, that kind of thing. Things that are like bring a momentary joy to people, but don't break the bank. I think that's a smart way to go. What do you think, Brad? What's your strategy?
I agree and I disagree.
Okay.
I agree that small things like the lower level things are going to be your base. Okay. In other words, those 99-cent ebooks and prints and stuff like that, those are definitely going to be your base. But take a look right now at how well Kickstarter is holding up for a lot of comics properties. In other words, the Lackadaisy animated short film, right, for Lackadaisy Cats, that's right now at this moment with 17 days to go. They're only at their halfway mark. They're at $209,000.
Goodness gracious.
Okay, the Bug Martini Kickstarter, and I think Adam's work is second to none in comics. His Kickstarter did really, really well, went way over its funding goal. In fact, that's just wrapping up as we're recording this. Kickstarter has held up fairly well, and not just for the cheap stuff, but it's held up pretty well for the bread and butter of comics artists, the softcover books with the rewards that go up the ladder. So I wouldn't shy away necessarily from doing a Kickstarter if the funding is not going to be the problem with the Kickstarter. The problem that you're going to have is, especially if you do your shipping overseas, is getting those books back over here to the States. And you need to give yourself, if you're going to do this, do what I'm doing right now in my Kickstarter, give yourself literally a couple of extra months to get those books in, and make sure you're communicating that in your risks and part of your the risk part of your Kickstarter. Make sure that you're communicating, hey, listen, there's going to be some pratfalls here that we're going to be navigating around. Be honest with your backers are going to understand, but give yourself a couple of extra months to get that stuff in. But so far, along with Patreon, Kickstarter has been very resilient. So I wouldn't shy away from Kickstarter. And I would go back to those other ways that cartoonists have traditionally made money happen fast. And that would include things like commissions, right? You can open up a commission list. And something that I continually get surprised by, I understand getting surprised by something once, but this is something that I get surprised by over and over and over again, like I never knew it before. People really do value digital rewards, and digital commissions, number one, are a lot easier to ship because you can do it at a push of a button. You can offer a little bit lower price point on it because you're not doing, for example, ink on paper or paint or something like that. Digital commissions still hold a lot of value for people, and it's a great way, in my opinion, to keep money coming in, especially money that you need quickly. So keep a commission list on your horizon. What else do you think we could offer people for ideas during this time, Dave?
Yeah, no, I think opening up a commission list, I'm a little bit more reticent to do it. And I think a commission list is a very good possibility. I think I'm personally, it's funny you should ask this question now, because Beth and I later today are going to be brainstorming ways we can get scrappy and entrepreneurial for the studio, right, in the next 2 to 12 months. And another way that I was going to suggest is I would like to do one eBay piece a week. With the acknowledged caveat that I know that I'm going to be making less money per piece than I normally would. Like my average will go down, but it's in group as a set over the course of 52 weeks. That'll be a great supplement for the overall health of the studio in terms of income. So basically, I'm the one thing, you always say, Brad, that creativity is our superpower and that we can create our way out of this. I can literally draw as much as I need to draw to make a lot of eBays. And so if they normally go for $150 to $500, but now they're all going for $100, well, I'll just draw more. That's okay. It's a version of flooding the market, but sometimes that has to happen. And so, I think commissions and eBay pieces are a great way, a great source that you can genuinely create out of nothing. And the costs are minimal. They are a piece of paper and a pen. And what a great resource that is.
And you can also take a look at adding those digital pieces to your Patreon. In other words, I've got a Patreon level that's $50 that stays full, in even, again, knock on wood, is remaining full right now. That gives people a digital reward every 2 consecutive pledges. Those commissions can be good pledge drivers. If you've got original art, we talked earlier about how putting original art in your Patreon for rewards, again, at the upper tiers, is a good driver of Patreon pledges. But the main thing out of all of this, so we've got Patreon, we've got Kickstarter, we've got commissions, particularly digital commissions, but also physical commissions, and we've got eBay, and we've got ebooks. And just a quick tangent there. I like the idea of giving out free ebooks, but I wouldn't be my Machiavellian self if I didn't mention that one of the reasons you should be giving away free ebooks is to point people to where they can also buy the next ebook or another ebook like it. In other words, it's a kindness, do it with that in your heart, but also listen to the devil on your shoulder that sounds a lot like me and say that should also be a loss leader for the other things in your store that are at a low price point.
Right. I will agree with you, and I didn't mention it because it is a little Machiavellian, but
Yeah.
the kind of the back of my brain also thinks this in those moments of kindness when I'm giving away ebooks is that I'm also in a Machiavellian way playing the long game.
Yeah.
In that the friendship you offer now in someone's dark moment comes back to you in spades when they have a
Yes.
flush day,
Yeah.
And so even though genuinely the impulse is to do it for kindness for people that are in a shitty moment, when
Mhm.
you give something away to them in a hard moment in their life, people don't forget that, Brad. I've had
Yeah.
people come back and be like, boy, I was in a tough place and you did XYZ 5 years ago, and now I'm here at the convention with you, and I would like to buy 3 originals, or I would like to,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen that person to person, year over year. That is a real thing. It's a real thing. And so it's sort of playing the long game in your career. Is the kindness you give out now, the free stuff that you give out now, comes back to you in the years ahead
Yep.
in bigger moments. So
Very often, especially when kindness is involved, you can give away a nickel and it'll come back a year later dressed up as a dime. You know,
yeah, is that a phrase, or did you just come up with that?
I think I might have gotten that from Dolly Parton. I hear her voice in my head when I when
Give
I
away
say
a
that,
nickel
but no, I
and
did
come
not
back
write it.
dressed as a dime. What a
Yeah.
great turn of phrase that
Yeah.
is, Brad. If you came up with that, you're an inventive SOB.
No, oh God, no,
Oh,
no, no.
and if
Just
Dolly came up with
just a
that, then
good
that's far
stealer.
more likely because she's a super creative SOB.
Just a
Um,
good thief. But I'm going to bring this conversation all the way full circle from when we started the show. And that is this: the number one thing to remember when you're trying to make money happen at this point in time is this: go back to Stan and Jack sitting on the floor, or trying to find that one chair that the creditors didn't take out the door. Go back to Stan and Jack and ask yourself this: in that moment, were they driven by courage or were they driven by fear? And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not the time for second guessing. This isn't the time for
Imposter syndrome.
humility. This is not the time. This is the time for you to get, pardon the expression, ballsy. This is the time for you to get brave, even if you got to fake your bravery. This is the time for you to take a chance, to take a little bit of a mitigate, not a financial risk, but a creative risk. This is the time for you to get confident and go out there and no second guessing for the next. I'm telling you, for the next 30 days, I'm calling a moratorium on no more second guessing, no doubts, no timidity. This is the time for you to get confident and to take your shot. Again, not putting money behind it. Be careful with your money. But
Right.
for your creativity, if this is the time you're like, oh, I've had this idea in the back of my head that I always thought maybe I should do, this is the time to make that thing happen and to make it maybe a Patreon exclusive. If you've been waiting off on your Kickstarter, I wouldn't let this give you a hesitation. Put all your thought and your planning into that Kickstarter and pull that trigger. This is not the time for self-doubt. This is the time for you to screw up your courage and put that thing out there. And I really do believe that.
Yeah.
I think this is the time to get strong.
To get strong. That's an issue. Yeah. I really like the way you phrase that. I'm not even going to amend that. I like you perfect on the way you phrase that. This is the time for no self-doubt, for getting
Yes.
strong, and for putting yourself out there. Basically, this is the time to all the years that you put out the work but didn't stake a claim into trying to make a living from it. Maybe this is the time to start doing that. So
Yeah.
I think you're right about that, Brad.
Yeah. And I will say that in that line, I think there's still time for that storyline series. It is not done yet. I would still take a look. And what's that URL again?
Storylineshow.com should get you to the Kickstarter, or you can just search on Kickstarter for Storyline.
Yeah.
And you know what, Brad? I have been holding back on it, but I am going to give one last big push on it to try to make that one. And even if it fails, it fails. But you're right that I have not been doing my full court press because I have been like, nah, this is not the moment for it. But I'm going to try. And
speaking so totally as a friend, and we haven't talked about this privately. My opinion has been that you've kind of psyched yourself out on that.
I think I have. And you know what? If it's going to fail, it's going to fail. I might as well at least try. So I'm going to, because guys, I will be honest with you. It's something that I'm proud of. I think it could be a really beautiful show. And I basically the world falling apart scared the hell out of me. And I pulled back like, well, no one's going to back this. But why not give it the old college try? You're hearing me in real time, like psyching myself up for this. So, storylineshow.com, or just go to Kickstarter and search Storyline. It is a beautiful and a loving look at interviews with some of the best cartoonists and animators in the world. And so I hope you will check it out. It also includes a beautiful interview and a hilarious interview with a somewhat soused Brad Geiger and I. So go check it out over at StorylineShow.com. And don't forget to go over to newevilbook.com. Brad is well into stretch goals, and it's looking amazing. So I cannot recommend that enough as well. And so, yes. And then in general, believe in yourself in this moment too, and have the courage to go out and, like me in real time right now, go, I can do it. I'm gonna try.
Yes, you can.
Boy.
Yes, you can. So listen, I think we've said it all, Dave. I think this has been
coming
an all
up on hour 4
show.
On this show.
Yeah, no kidding. But listen, the bottom line here is we're all in this together. Yep. This is something we're all going to have to feel our way through. Nobody knows the playbook on this because there is no playbook. Right. Just know that Dave and I are with you. We're pulling for you. We hope for the best, and we will make it through this thing. And someday we're going to laugh about it. But until go ahead.
Oh, I had one more thought because I've seen people doing this on Twitter recently, which is a lot of artists, especially friends of ours in Marvel, DC, Image, who don't have Diamond distribution suddenly and won't for the next 6 months, are realizing, oh God, I have to take ownership of my career. And in friendship, I will say this. Pass along to the artists that you know in your life that suddenly have to reevaluate how they do things. Things like ComicLab or things like webcomics.com, resources that they can turn to that very quickly give them the brass tacks of how to do it, because there's a lot of artists that are going to need to switch gears very quickly and do what we're doing. And so be a friend and pass along those resources to them.
And that's a great way to leave it. And I get to say you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, who legitimately helped turn my heart today, and I'm so thankful for his existence. The editor of webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my friend who has gotten me through a dark period or two in the last 30 days as well, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
Isn't that nice that, honestly, friendship can get you through? I know that sounds so like, oh boy, but like it really does carry you through shitty moments in life, and that's a lovely thing. Anyway, the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
Boy, we should have done one today because that would have chippered me up even more, but that's all right. Thank you all for the kind words. We do see it, and we do appreciate it. And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/ComicLab. Master Shakespeare!
Hold on. To be or not, hold on.
Wait, are you actually writing in there, Master Shakespeare?
Oh, my mind is going to all the wrong places.
Oh, your quills are out here. There's no way you're writing in there, Master Shakespeare.
Hold on, just let me finish writing this down.
Wait a minute, where is your laptop? Hold on.
Babysitter comes in late. Oh, how do I spell babysitter again?
And that's how Macbeth didn't get written, everyone.